In part 1 of this film series, we looked at background to the Industrial Revolution. Part 2, we looked at Europe before the Industrial Revolution. And this led to us looking at World War I, the main causes of the war. And I ended that one by saying that I believed, like many historians, like most historians, that World War I was fought for no good reason, no just reason. How could I say that? I say that with all respect to our ancestors who fought in the war and sacrificed for that war, believing it to be a good cause. But I use something called just war theory to look at that war. And we're going to look at an introduction to just war theory in this part of the film series. How do you know a war is just? Just war theory, it's been used for centuries by ethicists and some military strategists to test whether going to war is morally justified. And sometimes it's used to judge the morality of conduct in war. Now, it's been used for centuries, misused for centuries also, and perhaps neglected during the last century. Just war theory always starts with a presumption against war. That means it always starts with believing that war is not a good thing. Variations of just war theory exist, but in general, a war must meet 7 criteria. I'm going to look at one version of those 7 criteria with you. All 7 of these questions must be answered yes for a conflict to be declared a just war. First, is the cause of the war just? Or is some country trying to fight it for its own gain? Second, does the proper authority declare the war? For instance, with our international law system today, it's often the United Nations that gets to say is the proper authority to declare a war. Let's take the Iraq War, the Second Gulf War, as an example. The United States went to the United Nations to look for permission to prosecute that war. They were denied it, but the United States invaded Iraq anyway. The third question is there right intention? For instance, did the United States invade Iraq to save the world from weapons of mass destruction? Or did they want the oil? Or were they trying to get even for some slight done to the first George Bush president? Number 4, is there a reasonable chance of success? A war is not going to be just if a nation launches into it, causes a lot of damage and devastation, and they have no chance of winning it. Number 5, would the damage caused by the war be proportionate to the good obtained by the war? Wouldn't prosecute a war that's going to cause more suffering than it ends. Would the damage be discriminate? That is, would injuries to the civilian population be kept to a minimum? Well, take again the Iraq War. First thing they did was bomb Baghdad, civilian areas of Baghdad included. Number 7, is the war a last resort? Have countries exhausted all other means to resolve the conflict? The United Nations, diplomacy, economic boycotts, cultural boycotts, has everything been tried? So if a nation cannot answer, or the world cannot answer yes to all of those questions, a war is not considered just. Now, some historians say, with the technology and weaponry and its accompanying destruction of civilians and ecosystems that we possess today, think of atomic weapons, can these conditions ever be satisfied again in terms of traditional war? I went through that rather quickly. There is a sample history paper applying just war criteria to the Iraq War, and you can find that with the class resources if you want to look in more detail. And one option for a final project for this course that you find in Module 5 is to use just war theory to examine a 20th or 21st century conflict to determine if the conflict is just. Now, you don't need to agree with me on this issue or other issues in the course, but you do have to use good sources and good thinking, okay? That's a popular option. So we're going to have one more War and Peace quiz show to end the film series, and then we're going to just talk a little bit about World War II and the next, which leads into the next course assignment. So first, just war theory is used to test whether a war crime should be referred to the International Criminal Court, to determine the strength of a military alliance, whether war reparations are needed, whether going to war is morally justified, or whether an empire can be extended. What do you think? And the answer is whether going to war is morally justified. In just war theory, all 7 questions must be answered yes for a war to be considered just. Is that true or false? And that's true. Just war theory always starts with a presumption against war. That is, it always assumes that war is not a good thing. Is that true or false? And that's true. Which of the following are questions in just war theory? There are 7 questions. There are 4 listed here. Are they all the right questions? Is the cause of the war just? Does the proper authority declare the war? Is there right intention? Is the war a last resort? Or all of these? And as you probably guessed, I frequently have all of these as an answer. All of those questions. Those are 4 of the 7 questions in just war theory. So that's the last video of this assignment, looking at war and peace in the 19th to 21st centuries. After World War I, there was, of course, World War II. Even though they called World War I the war to end all wars, it was followed not many years later by World War II. We talked a lot about the causes of World War I. We're not going to go into great detail into the causes of World War II because there's one big main cause. Anyone know what that is? It was World War I. World War I, that war which was fought for no just reason, caused World War II. How could that be? Germany, after surrender, after the ceasefire in World War I in 1918, they had to pay great war reparations, enormous sums of money, and had to give up territory as a punishment for losing that war. This led to great economic hardship for the German people. And this was in the midst of the country was devastated by war, right? They lost a whole generation of fathers to this war. That led to psychological hardship. And it led to a wounded sense of nationalism and identity among the German people. There was no Truth and Reconciliation Commission, for instance, after the war to help people reconcile with what was going on. So what happened? Hyperinflation. For instance, a wheelbarrow of money was needed to buy groceries. Money was so worthless, some used money as wallpaper or for kindling. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how that would make a people feel on top of what they perceived that they were a militaristic culture? They perceived great humiliation for losing the war. So Germany, after the surrender and after the Treaty of Versailles, these conditions paved the way for the rise of Hitler and his Nazi party. Remember, your ancestors did not go to Europe to fight the Nazis in World War I. That was World War II, which was caused by World War I and the economic and psychological situation caused in Germany by the war. Without Nazis, would there have been any just reason for World War II? That's something you can think about. To help you think about that, you're going to watch one episode of a CBC series called Love, Hate, and Propaganda for your next assignment. It's called Episode 1, The Strong Man. And it's a good follow-up to what the material we've been looking at for our quiz. So next step is to write your quiz online in Brightspace. Don't procrastinate. Don't put it off. It's open book. You can use the document version of these slides as a reference. You may write the quiz twice. A separate video reviews the questions from all 4 parts of this series. They can also help you with your quiz, like the document that's found in Brightspace. Email or send me a Teams message if you have any questions or any trouble with the quiz. So, good luck. And remember, ALP Online, you can do it.